year is 2022 and India is celebrating 75 years of independence. 75 years ago, the British left India and we became free. Or did we? Would you say we are still colonized in our minds?
Welcome to my channel, everybody. So on this channel, I've been talking mostly about my travel experiences, but now I want to start something new. See, I was born in India, but then I migrated with my family to Germany when I was a kid. So I attended schools in India and in Europe, in Germany, and I wish to talk about that experience, how it was. India, Europe, India, and all that. So here we go. And before I talk about my challenges in Europe and the struggles I had, I'd like to talk about the Indian school system, because I really feel that this system is responsible for a lot of my problems which I had in Europe. I've been watching a lot of YouTube, and Indian YouTubers have made a lot of content on why the Indian school system is actually very, very colonial. Yes, you heard that right. It has never really been changed. This was shocking for me the first time I heard it, because I thought, you know, Indian schools are very patriotic and Jai Hind, and you know, everything is about your motherland. How could the system itself still be that colonial system? But it's true, and find out with me how. The next video, I will talk about coming to Europe and my struggles in Europe, and why this education system was the real reason for many of my struggles. My own suggestions on how this system can be changed. Revolution! Right, so before we start talking about how the British changed the Indian education system forever, let's first talk about what the Indian or this education in India used to look like. Have a look at these videos.
कि प्राचीन भारत में भी शिक्षा व्यवस्था थी। तब लोग शिक्षा हासिल करने के लिए गुरु या प्रभु की शरण में जाया करते थे। प्राचीन भारत की शिक्षा व्यवस्था में शिष्य को शिक्षा हासिल करने के लिए गुरु के आश्रम उनके घर ही जाना पड़ता था, और ये आश्रम बहुत बड़ा होता था। हालांकि ये कई राजाओं ने भी बनवाए होते थे, लेकिन शिष्य को वहां ही पढ़ना होता था और वहीं पर ही रहना होता था, चाहे वो किसी राज्य का राजकुमार ही क्यों ना हो। ये आश्रम किसी भीड़ भाड़ वाले इलाके से या किसी गांव शहर से बहुत दूर हुआ करते थे, किसी जंगल या वन के विस्तार में। इस एजुकेशन सिस्टम को वैदिक शिक्षा प्रणाली कहा जाता था।
गुरुकुल में तब के टाइम में वॉर टैक्टिक्स से लेकर लैंग्वेज, मैथमेटिक्स, एस्ट्रोनॉमी जैसे सब्जेक्ट सिखाए जाते थे, जैसे सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ाए जाते थे। एंड गुरुकुल के इसी मॉडल पर हायर एजुकेशन के लिए तक्षशिला और नालंदा जैसे एंशिएंट इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटीज भी थी। नालंदा लगभग 800 सालों तक एजुकेशन का एपिसेंटर था, जहां श्रीलंका, कोरिया, जापान और यहाँ तक कि टर्की से भी स्टूडेंट्स आते थे। इनफैक्ट डिड यू नो, गुरुकुल की एफिशिएंसी को देखकर ही ब्रिटिशर्स इनसिक्योर हो गए थे। ये बहुत ही कम नोन फैक्ट है कि 1830s में ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी द्वारा अपॉइंटेड विलियम एडम ने एक सर्वे रिलीज किया था। विलियम ने सिर्फ बंगाल और बिहार में सर्वे करके ये पाया कि केवल 2 स्टेट्स में ही लगभग 1 लाख गुरुकुल्स थी, जिसमें 20 लाख स्टूडेंट्स पढ़ते थे। ऑल्सो हमें यूजुअली ऐसा बताया जाता है, या फिर हमें ऐसा लगता है कि गुरुकुल्स में बहुत ज्यादा कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हुआ करता था, या फिर सिर्फ ब्राह्मण्स के बेटे पढ़ सकते थे, या फिर सिर्फ क्षत्रिय के बेटे पढ़ सकते थे। लेकिन विलियम ने ये भी बताया कि उन गुरुकुल्स में सभी स्टूडेंट्स एक साथ बैठते थे, मतलब वहाँ कोई भी कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं होता था। ऑल्सो गुरुकुल्स बिलीव्ड इन प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज, यानी कि वो अपने सब्जेक्ट के साथ साथ डेली लाइफ के डिसिप्लिन भी में भी ट्रेनिंग लेते थे, जैसे कि कुकिंग हो गया, क्लोथ्स वॉशिंग हो गया। बेसिकली अपने पढ़ाई के साथ साथ घर के काम वगैरह करना, अपने डेली लाइफ डिसिप्लिन में भी वो लोग ट्रेनिंग लेते थे गुरुकुल्स में ही जाकर।
Now, the British came in. In particular, there was one man who was responsible for changing the Indian education system, and he introduced the Indian Education Act in 1835. Let's find out about who this man was and what he did.
As a superior race, the British were superior, we Indians inferior. Thomas Babington, or Lord Macaulay as you would know him today, brought English education to India. His purpose was to hammer in the inferiority complex. They introduced an education system that hailed the British as superior in science, arts, even morals.
Don't somewhere you feel कि हमारे इंडियन रूट्स को भुलाने की एक कॉन्स्पिरेसी थी? Well, yes. इसकी शुरुआत थॉमस मैकॉले ने 1835 में की थी। मैकॉले ने इंग्लिश एजुकेशन इंट्रोड्यूस करके पुराने एजुकेशन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बर्बाद कर दिया था। सब जानते हैं ब्रिटिशर्स को ऐसे भारतीय चाहिए थे जिनका खून तो इंडियन हो, जो दिखते इंडियन हो, लेकिन उनका स्वाद English हो।
He said that the purpose of English education was to create a class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals and in intellect. He wanted to create a pool of Indians who would be able to serve the Britishers and be loyal to them.
So the schools get changed. So 1947, India gets independence, and then what? Yes, it did not get changed. Nothing got changed.
एजुकेशन सिस्टम है, ये कहाँ से आया है? ब्रिटिशर्स ने इंट्रोड्यूस किया था ना इंडिया में अपने फायदे के लिए, क्योंकि उनको चाहिए था रोबोट।
एस्टैब्लिश्ड आवर इंडियन एजुकेशन सिस्टम ऑब्वियसली ब्रिटिशर्स चाहते क्या थे हम इंडियंस से, कि हम इंडियंस लीडर्स बने या फिर स्लेव्स बने, हम टॉप मैनेजमेंट में पहुंचे, रईस बने, बहुत कामयाब हो, या फिर लाइफ लॉन्ग उनकी गुलामी करते रहे। Here you have got the answer, right?
We had the world's greatest education system. The British destroyed it and they imposed their colonial education system, their English language education system. The education system that we still follow is the same as the British education system, the colonial 19th century education system.
Yeah.
It's designed to create clerks and peons, not leaders.
It's in a sense it was made for factory workers, right? To
The system they had in India was a modification of that. It was designed to create slaves, clerks and peons at best. That's what it was. Absolute obedience. You may not question your teacher. You cannot ask questions. Repeat what they say. That's all. You want to stand up? Teacher, may I stand up? You want to sit down? Teacher, may I sit down?
Yeah.
You want to come inside? Teacher, may I come in? You want to go pee? Teacher, may I go pee?
One of the best adjectives you could use for a kid in school was he's a very obedient boy.
Absolutely. The best thing you could say, the best thing a teacher would say about the kid is he's very obedient. He's an obedient kid. Why should you be obedient? Rebel.
5 साल पुराना iOS भी आज की डेट में आउटडेटेड माना जाता है, लेकिन इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज हमारा एजुकेशन सिस्टम आज भी बस थोड़े से चेंजेस के साथ ऐसे ही चल रहा है।
1835 और वो पूरा ब्रिटिश है, हमें तो समझ में आता है कि ये सारी चीजें हमारे साथ क्यों हुई, बट सवाल ये है कि 1947 के बाद भी कोर्स करेक्शंस की कोशिश क्यों नहीं की गई? तब तो हमारे भारत की खुद की सरकार थी ना, तो हम उनके सिलेबस को हटा देते, अपने खुद के रूट्स के बारे में ज्यादा पढ़ाते।
But that's the kind of education system we are still following, which makes us to look down on our own culture. So why are we still blaming the Britishers for the inferiority complex that we have even after 75 years of independence?
The same system was kept in place, and it has continued till today. That system, which was made to enslave and manipulate the Indians into training them for serving the British Empire, that system has continued. A system which emphasizes on digesting information, memorizing stuff, and just following orders and instructions, and does not emphasize on leadership, on creativity, on fantasy. This is the current Indian system now. It was not an accident. It was made on purpose. The real accident was that it was never changed after independence. So, in the following, I would like to talk to you about 5 different aspects of the Indian school education which I experienced myself, and I would call them a colonial hangover. Let's figure out. Point number 1, the school uniform. Well, early in India, students used to dress up like this, and now they dress up like this. So how did they go from this to this? Well, here are a few reasons which speak against the school uniform. Number 1, school uniform is itself an outdated concept, I feel personally, because have a look at the world map here. These are the countries who still have uniform. These are mostly the developing countries who've been a colony, and then you have the countries in the West who don't have uniform. Is this a coincidence? I think not. So the next point is, this uniform is not yours, okay? It is a European style uniform which was imposed on you by the British to make you more civilized. So if you want to have a uniform, why not something more authentic? And the third point is, it's not suitable for the Indian subcontinent's climate, because the Indian subcontinent has a hot and humid climate where the body needs to keep breathing, the skin needs to breathe, okay? And the traditional way of dressing in India was suitable for that, but now the students, they're wearing socks, they're wearing shoes, they're wearing tight pants, they're wearing a belt, they're wearing a tight cotton shirt, they're wearing a tie, maybe even a blazer on top. They're suffocating, okay? They're suffocating, they're sweating, and they're smelling because it's not suitable for the Indian climate. Point number 2. Now in India, the trend has become to have English medium schools where the whole education is basically in English language. I myself attended English medium schools. Now the problem is that all the research has shown that children should study first in their native language, because this is how they learn more easily and this is how they can grasp concepts more easily. In other words, if you're learning in a foreign language, your system is basically working more slowly. Even the United Nations has said this very clearly. When India, for some reason, people want English medium education because they feel that children would more easily learn foreign languages. But it's the opposite, actually. If you don't study in your native language, you struggle with many things. Also, when it comes to technology and all that, there are many non-English speaking countries which are way ahead of India, and also other English speaking previous colonies. So I really don't understand this point. Point number 3, lack of sex education. Now in India, in the ancient Indian scriptures, there's a lot of talk and discussion and debate about sex. It's called, Kam Shastras, which have been talking about sex. Kam Sutra is an Indian manual, you might call it. Now, because the British thought this is an indecent topic to talk about, so they made sure that this will not be included in the education system. But the weird thing is that Indians have been always talking about this, so why would they not talk about this again? It's become a taboo even though it was never a taboo in Indian society, which is really, really painful to see. You look at all the problems in India now, you've got the rape, you've got the sexual harassment, and you do wonder if these children had proper sex education, would you still have these cases? Point number 4, school traditions. Now there are many school traditions and different, there's a school culture in India which is still very British. First of all, you have the house culture in India where all the students are sent to a house. So they belong to a class and at the same time they also belong to a house, which is a different set of group with people from different grades. Now I changed schools in India from this school to that school, and when I came to the new school, I not only had a new class, but I also had a new house to adjust to, and I was very confused why there's a house. Now it turns out this is a very British concept because back then in the days, the students used to live in a house, in a boarding school, and they made that house a group basically, so they could mentor each other. So why this concept is still being carried on now, I don't understand. Also, you might have seen this in the Harry Potter movie when all the students enter Hogwarts and they all get a hat to put on top of their head, and that hat says Gryffindor, Slytherin. So that's basically the house system because the author of Harry Potter was British. That's why you have it in Harry Potter. Now another thing is the badge system in India. So in India, good students get rewarded by getting a badge. The highest badge you can get is that of a head boy and a head girl. So basically these students represent the whole badge, and the next level is then the prefects, and then you have the house captains, the captains of the houses, and then you have sports captains and all that. But basically there is a hierarchy which starts with a head boy and a head girl, and then the prefects and all that. And my point is, this is again a very British concept.
However, the Indian Army remained loyal to the British, and its soldiers fought in many parts of the world. Many with great bravery.
But does this really suit India and Indian society? Because Indian society has had a lot of problem with oppression and hierarchy, Women have been oppressed, different castes have been oppressed. There has been a lot of hierarchy in Indian society. Why are you creating new hierarchies from such a young age onwards? Especially because it's not just the one-time medal they get, but they're actually wearing the badge on their shirts every day to school. So every day you see the person next to you, he's a prefect, that person is the head boy, that person is a house captain. Why are you creating so much hierarchy on an everyday level, And the other thing is, I remember from my time that when we used to walk down the stairs, you had the prefect standing in the stairways and they would be monitoring you and make sure that you're not pushing around other students and you're just walking properly. Look what they're doing. They're already making the prefects part of the system, because monitoring students is the teacher's job actually. But now they've given the prefect the badge and said, hey, now you're gonna do what the teachers do. Earlier you had students follow your orders, and now you're making students follow other students' orders who are following your orders. And then there's also this concept with the marching parades and the ceremonies. Like if you look at this, Indian school sports days and all that, there's a lot of marching around, and it's like an army, you have to be extremely synchronized.
The Indian Army was the largest in the empire. Most of its officers were British and white, but the troops were Indian.
The march began briskly with our school president, a well-disciplined and responsible student. Holding a school flag.
Even the things they say, the commands they give.
Stand at ease, attention. Stand at ease, attention.
These are all British things, be it the marching, be it even the band playing, be it these commands they're giving. This is a thoroughly British exercise which was made to discipline and civilize the Indian mind and train him to serve the British. Point number 5, literature and sports. Now, India has a very long history of literature. Mahabharata is, for example, the longest poem ever written down, but Indian children do not study anything about these things. In fact, many of them do not understand how ancient India worked and what these ancient Indian scriptures were, because the whole school system is focusing on English literature. Children are reading books written by Charles Dickens and all that. I grew up reading Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, Robinson Crusoe. Now, there's nothing wrong with these books, okay? They're nice, but like, are you sure the children can relate to these books? Because these books, especially the Charles Dickens books, they talk about the industrial era Britain, basically the hard life people were living in Manchester and all that. Does an Indian child really identify himself with that book? And also, Mr. Dickens was a highly racist person, because this is what he had to say about Indians. So you really wonder why colonial literature is still being taught in Indian schools. The other thing is sports. Like, I remember at school it was all about you playing cricket, you're playing football, you're playing basketball, you're playing hockey. Look, nothing against these sports, okay? I love them, but these are all, again, Western sports, and you have your own sports too. Like, there's Kabaddi, which is an Indian game. There's even a world championship with even many countries outside Indian subcontinent playing Kabaddi. Why don't you encourage Kabaddi a bit more? Because this is really connected to your country's history. So these were my 5 points about the colonial traits of the Indian school system, which I could recognize from my own experience. Now, it's really sad how this system, which was made for slavery, is now still being continued. And it's directly responsible for all the misery which is being caused in India, why students are so unhappy and so frustrated with the education system. Now, I'll maybe make separate videos on all of these 5 points, because I can talk much more on them, and there was not enough time to put all of this in one video. Also, I'm giving you in the notes below links of 10 different YouTubers, Indian YouTubers, explaining how the colonial era education system in India has still survived and is still continuing till date. So if you don't believe me, maybe you believe them. So this was part 1 of the video. Stay tuned for part 2, which will drop soon, and where I talk about my personal experiences in Europe. Till then, like, comment and subscribe to the channel so the video can have more outreach and the channel can grow. Thank you so much. See you.